What's going on, y'all? Today, I'm here to talk about the ridiculous patent that Nintendo's put out and the damage it's going to have to the gaming industry long term. So before we dive into it, let's take a look at the patent so we can understand what's happening. All right, so I'm gonna read it to you guys. Nintendo was recently granted a US patent back in September the 2nd for a specific summoning mechanic involving sending a sub-character to an overworld location, remember those keywords, to either automatically battle an enemy or move around if no enemy is present. This patent does not cover the general concept of summoning characters in games, but is more specific to the auto battling and movement features in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. See, that's how they push it to you, that it's for a specific game, and then all of a sudden it broadens up and now it's applying to all games. So I feel like the AI is just AI and it doesn't know any better, and that's, God bless your soul or your robotic soul. But the reality is that this is extremely broad and it 100% is going to apply to other games. So first off, we have to define what's a sub-character. I'm assuming it's someone other than the main character or primary character, right? So if you're playing a story game and you're playing Elden Ring, for example, and you want to bring in another character to help fight this boss for this cool story moment or whatever, that is no longer an option because technically that's automatically battling, right? Because you're not controlling the AI that shows up. And the other keyword here is overworld location, which is a big thing, which I'll get to in a second. But essentially, overworld isn't just about every game. Many games have an overworld location. So this other part that bothers me is that if you are sending in a sub-character to an overworld location to move around if no enemy's present. So you can't even have like pets follow you around on screen. That would also be a violation of the patent. Even if they're not fighting anything, simply existing on screen and moving automatically would be a violation of this patent. So that would affect cozy games. If you have pets or anything like that, that's not going to fly. You would have to come to an agreement with Nintendo or some kind of licensing thing. And that's scary, and that's another thing I have to talk about. All right, so let's take a step back. Let's identify what overworlds are. And I'll use Wikipedia, but I've looked at Google AI and Reddit, and they're all pretty much the same, and I agree. An overworld or a hub world is, in a broad sense, an area within a video game that interconnects all its levels or locations. They are most commonly in role-playing games, though this does not exclude other video game genres such as platformers and strategy games. I think this might be the AI overview, actually. No, it's not, but it's fairly close. So what that means is that if you have a central hub where you go to, and I said earlier overworlds, and that's still technically true, but what I meant to say is a lot of games have a central hub where you go to heal, buy, sell items, weapon upgrades, armor upgrades, converse with NPCs, etc. A lot of games have a central location to do that because it's convenient for players. Straight up, it is absolutely convenient to have all that in one spot, because the way it used to be was that if you wanted this item, maybe Dark Souls would be a good example. In Dark Souls, like if you wanted to talk to one person, you'd have to travel, or maybe Bloodborne might be the better one, but Dark Souls has it too. If in Bloodborne, there is a central hub where you can talk to one or two characters, but if you want to buy from someone, you have to go fast travel back into the map. You have to run down this path, run, fight, avoid enemies, get to the NPC, travel back, and then go into the central hub or fast forward to the next place. And that is a lot of extra steps when you could have it all in one space. But that is your central hub. Now, when you leave that central hub, you're going back into the overworld, and then that's when the summoning mechanic starts to apply. If you have a central hub and you leave that hub to go play other parts of the game, that means your foot is already in the door. Even if you're not doing any summoning, just a simple fact that you have a central hub to separate the player and give them all the resources, that creates a situation for where you can now violate the summoning mechanic. And that's why it's such a big deal. Ironically enough, with this patent, it doesn't technically affect Palworld, because if the keyword here is overworld and having a central hub, I think it's a little more vague than what they've made it to be. But the overworld is where you go to when you leave your central hub. Central hub is where you do all your stuff, and then you leave to go to different parts of the world map or whatever, right? Palworld doesn't have central hubs. Your central hub is your base, I suppose, but even then, there's no one, there for you to buy from. If anything, this would affect Pokemon more than Palworld, but it would affect everyone else quite a bit, which is actually kind of ironic. Now, the biggest problem of all of this is that Nintendo has kind of set a precedent that if you want to go after a gaming mechanic, you can. And what's to stop other gaming companies, big studios, even corporations who have nothing to do with gaming, right? There's nothing saying that you have to be a gaming company to do a patent. You can just do a patent to do it. You know, you look at like the Sierra Mist incident, for example. The person who trademarked or copyrighted or whatever you want to call it, the Sierra Mist name, they're not a soda company. They don't do anything soda related, but they got their hands on it. So that same principle is going to apply to patents. You know, what's to stop major corporations from patenting gaming mechanics? And now all of a sudden, sorry, I had to clear my throat, but like I was saying, you would have to obtain some kind of permission, which typically comes through a license, right? So now these big corporations are gobbling up game mechanics. Now you can't use healing. Now you can't fast travel. Now you can't buff yourself. Like, I mean, if you can patent the way two people, the way battling occurs, what's to stop you from patenting anything else in gaming? All these corporations now have access to that. Now, all of a sudden, game studios have to go through all of these corporations to get licensing. I'm almost positive they're not going to give it to them for free. So now gaming studios are having to pay for a license to use features in the game that previously were free. And the only reason that they have to pay money for them now is because somebody called dibs on it, which makes zero sense. You know, imagine somebody calling dibs on walking. But anyway, my point is now gaming companies, studios, developers, publishers, they have to pay money to somebody to use all these mechanics, right? And who knows how greedy, like this is unprecedented. Who knows what that price is going to be set at? And let's assume it's even reasonable. I mean, there's no reasonable price if we're being 1000% transparent. But if they were to say, okay, we're going to charge you $100 a month for as long as you use our mechanic, right? So now their studios are paying more money per month. And I'm sure corporations are going to scale that per users. Okay, you have 50,000 concurrent players. Let's make the fee 500. Oh, you have 5 million. Let's make it 5,000. Let's make it $50,000 a month, right? And typically games don't generate money that long term unless it's live service. And even then, you know, it varies quite a bit. But even then, now there's going to be even more incentive to do microtransactions to take care of the licensing fees, or in situations where there is no live service, there is no battle pass or some kind of seasonal content, you know, monthly update stuff. If that stuff is not in the picture, then what's going to happen when the studio is done with that game? You know, it's been made and now it's in maintenance mode where they just do the best they can to keep it up to par and they move on to the next project. Are they going to have to keep paying that fee even though they're not getting any money for it or from the game anymore? You know, what's going to happen there? I mean, if they sell the game, is the price of the game going to go up to cover the licensing fees? Just look at tariffs. Tariffs, you know, for only the companies outside the US that are importing their stuff. When people buy that stuff from those, when people have to pay the fee for tariffs, they don't eat that fee. They pass it to the consumer. That's me and you. So if game studios have to pay licensing fees, which are basically tariffs, then what's going to happen to games? Prices are going to inflate. You know, we already have Nintendo doing paid DLC for a game that hasn't come out yet. There are a lot of bad precedences that are about to set in. I really hope this doesn't go anywhere, or if it does, I hope the communities come together and shut it down and just watch games die for being greedy. But this is just bad. This is all around bad. There is nothing positive about this whatsoever. It should be illegal to patent gaming because it's so broad and it affects everyone almost immediately. And honestly, it sets a precedent for people patenting other stuff, like stuff that's not gaming related. Like I said, literally just walking. But there's a patent on sidewalks and stuff like that. You know, I know that's very broad and I'm going to go down that rabbit hole, but it's not off the table. If you can patent something as simple as a function that everyone uses every day, there's really no stopping anyone else from doing that. Now, of course, they didn't get a lot of pushback on this, and maybe they should have. Maybe in the future, there will be way more pushback so that we don't have another scenario like that. But as it stands, this is like another snowball effect, just like with PayPal. Not PayPal, but credit processing companies coming into Steam saying, hey, we don't like our consumers using these games, get them out of here. And like that's kind of started a snowball to where now PayPal was removed from Steam, I'm pretty sure. But that's a whole nother conversation. But you can kind of see how people are overstepping their boundaries, not being challenged, and now it is dramatically changing the space. So that's all I had to say about the patent. I think this is a terrible idea. I think it should be illegal. There is no way that this should have flown. You know, I should have got through the approval. It should have never got that. It should never came to that. This is really bad. And I hope that this is the only company bold enough to do that. And I hope nothing else gets approved because It's only going to get worse from here. And I really, really hope that other big corporations don't catch on to what Nintendo did and start doing this kind of patent BS for their games. I can see Activision doing stuff like that. I hope it doesn't come to that, though. I can see Ubisoft doing stuff like this, you know. But again, hopefully the community can come together and shut it down if it does become a bigger thing. But I want to hear from you guys if you made it this far. You know, like, sub, comment what you think about the patent, and, you know, what do you think? Was I on the money with this? Was I off the money? What did I miss? I'd love to hear from you guys. Again, sub, like, all that good stuff. Y'all stay safe. Peace.